I just wanted some clarification on tithing.
Being unable to forgive somebody who causes an offense
Does
towards
it really matter whether someone is Protestant or Catholic?
The genealogies are different from Matthew to Luke.
I was wondering what the Bible said in terms of what I should do.
This is Pastor's Perspective. We're here every Monday through Friday providing answers on a variety of topics, including the Bible, end times, other religions, and the family. Call right now with your question at 1-888-564-6173. That's 888-564-6173. You can also post your question at facebook.com/Pastor's Perspective. And now here again is your host, Brian Perez.
Well, how's it going, everybody? Thank you so much for listening to the Pastor's Perspective program. Here we are, ready to answer some Bible questions. 2 hours worth of Bible questions, because we're here till 5 p.m. Pacific time to talk to you guys. So give us a call at 888-564-6173, 888-564-6173. In the studio with me today, Pastor Brian Broderson from Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa in Southern California. Also author and apologist Dr. Bobby Conway, who posted a new video last night to the 1minuteapologist.com page, also the 1 Minute Apologist channel on YouTube. Should Christians take medication was the title of the video. It's about 3 or 4 minutes long, so you might want to watch that. Bobby, give us like an overall like a synopsis or something of what that was about. Not necessarily giving us the whole 4 minutes, but just what was that about? Why did you put it up? I don't want you to give us the whole 4 minutes because then nobody will go online to watch your video, which was really well done. But go ahead.
Well, thank you. We just released our mental health crash course that we've been talking about for quite some time, designed hopefully for people to get and even go through in churches with their small groups. So that's available now and want to encourage people to check that out. And we are just releasing kind of some mini snapshots of things that we've talked about in that course. And one of those would be, what about medications? Is that permissible? And so we are trying to just create some extra videos, kind of like an appendix of sorts, to go along with the crash course. And that video is playing a role in that way. And so I contend that medication should be our last place that we go to, but it's not off the table. There is a place where it can really be helpful to somebody. And as long as we're not turning to it first and we go to it as something last when we kind of crossed all the T's and stuff like that, then great, it can be a resource. And it helped me for a season of my own depression. I was on antidepressants for about 4 years. It was the last thing I turned to, but it really helped me because sometimes if people are in a church and they're told, hey, you know what? You can never get on it. And if they don't feel like that's an option that they might turn to, and if they can't cope any longer, sadly, there have been people who have taken their lives and other things. So it could be something that helps people. And so I like to say, it's like I heard it from a counselor who said, Bobby, if you take antidepressants, if you're in the middle of the lake drowning, all it does is it throws you a life vest. You still have to swim to shore, but at least it makes it seem doable.
Yeah, you were talking about not only the mental health prescriptions, but also things like for high blood pressure, things of that nature. And then you also mentioned something that I found very interesting, especially since the three of us on the program right now, we are all bespectacled. We are wearing prescription eyeglasses. So can you imagine if we said, nope, I'm just going to trust God to heal my eyesight. And yes, of course he can do that. But most of us go and we get the prescription and we're wearing our glasses or contact lenses or LASIK or whatever the case might be.
Yep, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
We're wearing glasses.
Yes, we are.
Because we need them.
We need them.
We love Jesus. We trust God.
Yes.
But
we
God
wear
gave us a brain.
Yes.
So we're using our brain too.
There you go.
And this makes me think about something, but being old, sometimes I think about something, then I forget what I was thinking about. And this is one of those moments. So.
I think there's a prescription we can give you for that.
Yeah,
so
it's prescription. Yeah. It was about, the glasses thing got me going on it. What was it? Yes. Oh,
like Prevagen
no, I remember. No, here's the thing. I think we have to understand that, of course, God can do miraculous things, and we do believe that he still does do miraculous things in these days. But I think what we need to understand is miracles are the exception. That's the very definition of them. They are extraordinary things. In other words, they're things that don't happen all the time. So if we try to make the miraculous the norm, then we're missing. It's no longer a miracle because it just happens all the time. So I think, a lot of times I think Christians, the go-to is, okay, God, do a miracle here. Well, he might, but he probably is going to use other things other than miraculous intervention to help us through whatever it is that we're going through. So, we hold out for the miracle, we ask for it, but, it's a good case in point. I mean, I would love to not wear glasses, but I have to because it's just the nature, my eyes went bad a long time ago, and God hasn't seen fit to correct my vision miraculously. So, but he did give people wisdom on how to create eyeglasses and how to come up with LASIK surgery and how to, contact lenses and all those things. So that's all part of God's providential blessing and means of helping us as well, right?
Indeed.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
Yeah. Bobby looked perplexed for a moment there. I don't know. I guess it was just the delay.
Yes, that delay almost makes it seem sometimes like he doesn't know the answer to the question, like he's thinking about it. But
I know, he's just looking at me like, I don't know what you're talking about. But it's because he's not hearing.
No.
He's not hearing what
bro.
I'm talking about.
all right, so check out that video on the 1 Minute Apologist channel on YouTube, and you'll find it there. This is Pastor's Perspective. 888-564-6173 is the number to call, 888-564-6173. Pastor Brian Broderson taught at church last night. Yes, you were there.
Pastor Brian did not teach at church.
Did not teach at
because
church.
It's the week of prayer. Pastor
right.
Brian
How's that
prayed.
going?
I prayed at church.
You prayed at church. Very good.
Yes. It's going.
It's very good.
Yeah, it's going
very
really
good.
nice. Yeah. It's been beautiful. It's been a beautiful week. We're doing morning, noon, and night prayer. So 6:30 a.m., midday, and then we're meeting and broadcasting online. We're meeting doing our evening service. And yes, last night we had a wonderful time. We prayed for kind of just the local church, our expression of the church here, and Jordan Taylor, who's our executive pastor, joined me, or I joined him actually, because he led the night, and then a couple of our team, Hannah Colt and Hannah Cottage, they joined us as well. And we had a nice group of people come out, and so it was good. It's been we do this 1 week in January each year. It's just a way to kind of to reset for the year to come, just to take the whole week. Don't have any normal services like, the regular Bible studies and things. We just dedicate all of our time to praying. And so it's been good,
Great. All right, cccm.com is where you can find out more about the week of prayer, and you can watch tonight, 7 o'clock tonight?
7 o'clock,
7 o'clock Pacific time at cccm.com and on the social media channels, which you can get links to from cccm.com. All right, 888-564-6173 is the number. We're here till 5 p.m. Pacific time. Right now, let me start with a question that was sent in on Facebook before we get to the phones at 888-564-6173. Rich sent this one in. Right now, I am struggling with doubt in my Christian faith. The Capitol riots rocked me deeper than I thought. So many believers fusing Jesus, QAnon, and Trump together into one and violently taking out anyone opposing them. Add to that, pastors defending these thugs. So many high-profile leaders falling into scandal, falling for so many debunked conspiracy theories. Right now, I find conservative atheism very appealing. I've been reading up on the subject, and it seems conservatives who don't believe in God at all are more Christ-like and gracious than those claiming to follow Christ. Pastor Brian, we'll start with you. What would you tell Rich?
Well, I mean, those are legitimate concerns. There are those people that are behaving badly who are, claiming the name of Christ or to be representing Christ. I think there's also a mixture of other folks in there who might even be pretending to be Christians, who are doing that as well, with their own agenda. But make no mistake about it. I mean, I know firsthand from things that I've posted and the criticism that I've received and the attack and so forth that there's some unpleasant people in the church who are angry and who are lashing out and who are, if you disagree with their position or what they think should have happened, especially around politics and so forth, then you are demonized and you're labeled. So that is true. But why would you go to conservative atheism? I mean, the point here is not really conservatism or progressivism. The point here is the gospel and God. In my view, I don't really want to stand solidly in either camp of conservatism or progressivism. I want to stand with Jesus, and we've talked about that before. I think using the passage in Joshua that we referred to, where Joshua comes to who identifies himself as the captain of the Lord's army and asks the question outside of Jericho there, who are you for? Are you for us or our enemies? And the Lord says, no. I love that. No. And basically what he's saying is, I'm not on either side. Mm-hmm. I am my own side. I'm for myself, and you need to get on my side. And so I would say to our writer, you need to get on Jesus' side. And, people are going to behave badly. I've seen Christians behave badly my entire Christian life. I have seen it from my earliest stages as a Christian. Christian leaders behave badly. Christian leaders commit sin. Christian leaders get up and preach one thing and do something else. I've seen it my entire life. But I learned early on that they were not the standard. Jesus was the standard. And I never saw Jesus do any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. So, I want to just push people back to Jesus. Christians have behaved badly for all of history. And if you just looked at the church historically, heck yeah, why not jump ship and go do something else? But of course, there are many millions and millions of Christians who are faithful and who have lived extraordinary lives and very godly lives. But they never get into the news. Nobody ever reports on them,
Right.
And they are the majority.
Yeah,
they are the majority. I think this, and I think even this current angry group of people is probably a bit of a minority. But we have got to keep our eyes on Jesus, you know. At the end of the day, the Lord is not going to ask questions about like, well, what do you think my followers, what do you think of my followers? It's kind of, the question is, the Father's going to ask people, what do you think of my son? What did you do with my son?
Yep.
Because Jesus never fails. He did not fail. He doesn't fail. So I would say, and Bobby, weigh in on this if you want. I mean, conservative atheism, it's like, why? What is even the point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the thing that it would make me wonder is where do atheists get their conservative values? I mean, if we evolved according to natural selection from a process that began in a primordial soup bath eons and eons ago, the process of naturalism is deterministic. And you have no free will. And so you don't have really the ability to think about why or how you could have done otherwise. And that's what free will is, the ability to do otherwise. And why would you want to become a conservative atheist? And then you're going to inherit a whole new set of problems. So when I think about my doubts, I like to think about, well, what would these doubts feel like in another worldview? And what you'll find out is going over to atheism. And by the way, I would totally disagree that like, all the atheists are just warm and fuzzy and loving. You can find some friendly atheists. But I mean, I've seen some very mean-spirited atheists. You can just step online. They're called the New Atheists. It is the fundamentalist branch of atheism, and they even turn off your non-fundamentalist atheists, where their own atheists are calling them out for being so overly rigid. But where are you getting your values on atheism? I mean, what you end up doing is you're borrowing from God. You're taking values that are Christian in origin, and then you're sanctifying them in the name of your so-called atheism. And that doesn't work either. And so we shouldn't be surprised, as you said, Brian. I mean, Jesus wasn't surprised by this. He was constantly dealing with people that were dropping the ball. The Bible's filled with God using people who actually were his true followers that dropped the ball all the time. And you know what I love about Jesus? Like, I don't know about you, but man, if I had a bunch of friends that just left me hanging in the midst of my toughest moment of life, even denying me, the last thing I think I would do is go pursue them. But you know what Jesus does? He goes after them and he pursues them, because that was his mission, to seek and to save the lost. And his hope was not in humanity. Rather, his hope was getting humanity to see that he's the hope. And as long as we can recognize that, that can make all the difference.
Yeah, that's great.
Good stuff, guys. Rich, hang in there. Don't give up. And Bobby, I like what you said. If you turn to conservative atheism, you're just going to have a whole nother set of problems. So there's crazy stuff happening in all the camps. So just hang in there.
Yeah, and like you said, Bobby, too, I think, just circling back around to that, I mean, you can be a conservative atheist if you choose to be, but there's no real basis for being that. It's just, you just decided to be that. Not because there's any outside standard that says this is the way one ought to behave. I mean, really, in atheism, there's not even any such thing as good or bad behavior, right? Because it's all based on opinion.
Right.
It's like, it's all subjective. It's all relative. It's, well, I'm fine with the way I am. This is just how I evolved over the time, and therefore, why would you say I'm wrong? There isn't a standard. So
exactly,
with the Christian faith, you have an outside standard that holds you accountable. Without a God, it's all up for grabs. Mm-hmm. Anybody could really do anything they want, and nobody could say that's good or bad or right or wrong. And as a matter of fact, the most famous new atheist is Richard Dawkins. And he just says, actually, there is no such thing as good or evil. It's all just relative and made up, and there's no such thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, what?
Yeah. And then he says people are evil who teach their kids about God. So wait, I thought there was no good or evil. But now all of a sudden there is good or evil.
Yeah.
It's a confusing world out there.
That it is.
It is.
All right, 888-564-6173 is our number, and we're going to go to Nevada for our first call. Here is Jordan. Welcome, Jordan, to Pastor's Perspective. Hello.
Hi. So I was reading in my Bible in 1 Kings chapter 6, and it was talking about the temple of the Lord, and I came across the word cherubim, and I was wondering what exactly that is.
All right, Bobby, we'll start with you. What are cherubim?
The cherubim, these are spirit creatures created by God. They first show up in Genesis chapter 3, where they're kind of guarding the garden after Adam and Eve are expelled as a result of their moral failure. And obviously, yes, you see them in the articles in the tabernacle, like you're coming across. But these are spirit beings created by God, along with seraphim. The seraphim are these six-winged spirit creatures. And then you have what are known as archangels. And so the debate is whether or not these cherubs are angels or spirit creatures. And the word angels, it means messenger. And so as a messenger, it comes from the Greek word angelos. And so these messengers, they go out, and so what I think Pastor Brian says, as I've heard him talk about it, is that you don't see these cherubs going out to be messengers, so to speak. So therefore, he would not qualify them as angels. Is that correct? Description of how you would qualify?
Yeah, I mean, I said that recently because, I think that is the distinction is, an angel is a messenger. And when we think of angel, we think of a spirit messenger. And that's appropriate. But the word, like you'd mentioned, Bobby, the Greek word is going to be applied not just to spirit beings, but it's going to be applied to anybody who's a messenger, right? But the cherubim and seraphim, they seem to have a specific place near to the throne of God. They're not going out. Hebrews says that angels are all ministering spirits sent forth to minister to those who are the heirs of salvation. The cherubim are not doing that. So they're I think, just a spirit being, a different category of spirit being. And as a matter of fact, in Ezekiel, there's a reference to the anointed cherub that covered, and that is a reference to Satan's previous state before he rebelled against God. And so when you read the description there in Ezekiel 28, you're actually having a description of the wording says that he was the most perfect of all of God's creation. So a highly, very high-ranking being, the highest of the beings in the universe apart from God. So it's really fascinating.
All right, Jordan, what did you think of that answer?
Thank you guys so much. That really answered my question.
All right.
Thanks,
you for
Jordan.
Yeah, thanks for calling us. 888-564-6173. Next, we're going to go to Georgia. Here is Jack. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective, Jack.
Hey, so I generally listen to you guys on my drive home from work, which is what I'm doing today. And I really appreciate y'all very much. I'm from Augusta, Georgia, and just love your program. I so much appreciate things. And I wanted to...
Thank you, Jack.
I kind of wanted to just drop you into my Bible study here for just a second. So I teach a Bible study, and I've been teaching lately something I've never done before, which is teach the story of John the Baptist and what God did with him and who he was and what's his purpose and all that. And we got to this passage in there in Luke chapter 3 where, John's talking about baptizing with water, and they said, Jesus is going to baptize with the Holy Spirit and with fire. And he said he's ready to separate the chaff from the wheat and all that, which is, of course, speaking about judgment coming and separating the believers from the unbelievers. And then verse 18 says, John used many such warnings as he announced the good news to the people. And I was just really struck by that he, that it said he used warnings to announce the good news. It seems contrary to the way we think, I think. But I was curious as to what you guys would think about what was going on there when he was saying he was using warnings as announcing the good news.
All right, Brian?
Yeah, that's a great question, a good observation. And I think, just backing up a little bit into the bigger picture of the gospel, the gospel is good news. And as John is proclaiming that good news, he's aware that there's going to be resistance, right? Because he says, to the Pharisees, he says, don't think to say, we have Abraham as our father. God is able to raise up from these stones. So he's in his context, he's sensing the resistance to the good news. So he's warning them about the need to drop their resistance and receive the good news. But even as we would make appeals with the gospel to people, there is a place, at times in our appeal to warn people about the consequences of rejecting the good news, because the good news is there and available, but not everybody's going to see it as good news or want to embrace it. So there's a place for warning. So that's what I would. That's how I would understand what John is saying. But I get what you're saying, because, it's good news. We don't think of good news coming with warnings, but there is another side to the coin that, this is the good news. God loves you, and Christ died for you, and he was raised from the dead for your justification, and you can have your sins forgiven and be given eternal life, and you can know God and enter in his plan. That's all the good news. The bad news is if you reject that, then you are still dead in your trespasses and sins.
Mm-hmm. Bobby, what would you add to that?
Mm-hmm. Those are good words right there, Brian. I mean, this is the word parakaleo, and you use the phrase appeal, and I really do think that that's capturing it. The ESV talks about exhortations. I know that the word warning was brought out, but it is an appeal. It is a warning, an exhortation. And I think that we see a lot of people today. So I get concerned with the prosperity gospel that just wants to focus on the good side of things, focus on all that God has to offer. And I think that lopsided view of the gospel bankrupts people from realizing what they're really getting into. If you see Jesus even in his bread of life sermon in John chapter 6, I mean, his stuff was hard for people to digest. I mean, he would lose an audience and then stand so secure in his skin after people walked away, and he'd say to those remaining, hey, do you want to take off as well? I don't know many pastors who would lose a bunch of people and then say to those who left the leftover, well, this is your opportunity to take off. Go for it. And there were times when I was preaching and I would be going through the scriptures like the Gospel of John, and I'd be hitting some hard passages and I wasn't holding back. And then I would get up the next week and I go, I can't believe you came back to church this week. And that was a great encouragement, because we need to be able to talk about repentance and sin. I mean, look, Jesus came into the world to deal with our sin problem. And if we try to act like we don't have a sin problem, then we can act all we want like we've got the gospel. But the gospel, what makes good news good, is the fact that the bad news that we're sinners can be dealt with.
Mm-hmm. Jack, what do you think?
Well, I mean, yeah, thank you very much. I mean, that's very helpful. I mean, good news from what? I guess salvation from what's going to happen if you don't understand the good news, I guess, is what you guys are saying. So
yeah,
that's great.
If you don't embrace it, if you reject it, yeah. Yeah, so, next time, Jack, just jump in the car and drive up to Charlotte, and you can just sit down and chat with Bobby. You guys can figure some of this stuff out. We're looking at the map. We're seeing that you guys aren't too far from each other.
No, not that far. 3 hours. We could get there.
Well, each of you drive 90 minutes, meet halfway in the middle.
Well, I'd love to do that. I know he's a busy man, but, maybe we can work it busy.
Oh, he's not busy. He's just producing videos and starting a new church and doing radio, and he's not busy at all.
Busy's not the right word.
Right.
Yeah.
God bless, Jack. Good to talk to you.
Yeah, and thanks for listening on Freedom Radio FM. They're a network of radio stations that are in 21 different states here in the U.S. And if you're going to be traveling or moving or whatever, look them up and see if maybe there's a station that's going to be in the state that you're in. But they're all over the place. So thanks for listening. Yep.
And we're on that. We're on
Freedom Radio FM. Yeah.
That is fantastic.
Yep. They're in
That's
all.
Great.
Yeah.
It's funny, when I saw Jack's thing, his name comes up on the screen and then it said John the Baptist underneath it. Just for a split second, there's a guy on Twitter called Jack the Baptist. And my mind just went to Jack the Baptist when I saw that. So.
You thought he was calling.
Yeah. But, you could have called him Jack the Baptist, right? Because, I had an Uncle John who was nicknamed Jack. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. You know what I'd love if we could figure out is if there was a way to get on the Christian radio stations here in Charlotte. I don't know if that's something that K-Wave has access to, but just being in the area, starting a church, I think it would be really cool if we could have this radio show. Yeah. We've got two pretty big Christian radio shows right here in Charlotte. But
well, why don't you just take your Southern charm and just walk right into those stations and just see if you can charm our way in?
Take Heather with you. I'm sure that.
Take Heather. Yeah, take Heather.
All right, back in a moment with more questions. Stand by.
Pastor's Perspective continues in just a moment. Stay with us. Welcome back. Pastor's Perspective continues with your question to 1-888-564-6173. And now here again is your host, Brian Perez.
That number again is 888-564-6173. Keep it handy if you're trying to call in right now. You can't get in because the phone lines are all busy, but we're here till 5 p.m. Pacific time today. As these calls drop off, you can jump in, try to take one of the lines, and then you can ask your question. And answering the questions today are Pastor Brian Broderson from Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa in Southern California. You also hear Brian on the Back to Basics radio program on many of these same stations. And author and apologist Dr. Bobby Conway from the 1 Minute Apologist channel on YouTube is here as well. And we'd love to hear from you at 888-564-6173. All right, guys, here we go with more calls. We've got our friend Tiny with some not-so-good news. Hi there, Tiny. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective.
Hi.
Hi, it says here your sister passed away this morning, huh?
Yeah, she just passed away. They took her to the hospital this morning. I just found out about 2:30. My brother and Mom were dreading telling me because of how I'd taken it, and I just broke down and cried for, a long time. But,
yeah.
I mean, I know she's with the Lord, and, because she really loved Jesus a lot. And I just thank everybody there who prayed for her, all the people out there who prayed for her. And, I just want to, because I know the one verse, to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. I've been a Christian for a long time now, and, I just, thank God and everything. And, little bit of good news. I got back together with my fiance, and she said her little sister keep pushing her, saying, but I want my daddy back. I want my daddy back. And, oh, my God, I just broke down. And I said, okay, we'll get back together. I mean, because I love her so much.
Yeah, okay, so we're going to put you on hold really quick. What Bible verses could you give to Tiny to help him during this time?
Well, here, what's written up here, I think is interesting. Tiny sister, as we know, she passed away today, and we prayed for her often. Why does it hurt so bad? What Bible verses are good for comforting when someone passes away? Well, it hurts because this is somebody you love, and you're now your relationship with them at this point, as far as your earthly experiences is now ended. And that's always going to be a painful thing. There is just absolutely no way around it, And we are not stoics as Christians, meaning that we are not feelingless, I know sometimes, I remember even as a younger Christian, you kind of thought like, well, now we're Christians, and when we die, we go to heaven, so what are people sad about? I mean, come on, get over it. And we need to just be like, hey, they died, no problem, let's move on. And that was just an immature understanding of reality. And, what you realize in Scripture is it allows us to be completely human in our experiences, and yet at the same time have a faith and a confidence that God is greater than the problem itself. And so I think the great passage here is Paul writing to the Thessalonians, and he's talking to them about those who have died that they're concerned about. He says, brothers and sisters, we do not want you to be uninformed about those who sleep in death, so that you do not grieve like the rest of mankind. So he's not saying you do not grieve. We do grieve, but we don't grieve like everyone else because we have hope. So he says the rest of mankind who have no hope. So for people who don't know Christ, death is the end. And it's, okay, this is over. For people who are in a relationship with Christ, we don't grieve like that because we know that, as Paul goes on to say, for we believe that Jesus died and rose again, and so we believe that God will bring with Jesus those who have fallen asleep in him. So, in other words, Paul is saying, we're going to see them again. We're going to be reconciled to them. So we understand, as painful as this is, it is a temporary separation that's going to be remedied by being brought together again forever.
Yeah.
So.
All right, Tiny, thanks for your phone call, and we're all praying for you here and your families. So thanks so much for your phone call and for listening to the program. 888-564-6173. Let's go to Ronnie calling from California. And Ronnie's taking a philosophy class in college. And what did your professor do, Ronnie?
Oh, well, she was letting us know that what we're to be expected of the class and what questions we have. And so she's like, we'll probably talk about this subject. And it was, are we really here or just brains and some vats, which I know isn't true, but I don't know how to answer that. So I was wondering, how can I answer that?
Wow.
This is a question for the double D.
Absolutely.
The double doc.
Bobby Conway.
Come
Are
on,
we just
Doc.
brains in a vat?
Bobby is a doctor of philosophy, so.
His videos, I'm excited to hear.
What was that, Ronnie?
I've been binge watching his YouTube videos for apologetics, and so it's really nice talking to you. Hi.
Well, that's great, Ronnie. Thank you so much for calling in to our program. Yes, this is a question that gets posed. Are we just brains in a vat being stimulated by some mad scientists who pre-programmed us to think that we've existed for 40 or 50 years, but when in reality we just began to exist 5 minutes ago? This kind of thought, it's kind of absurd, isn't it? This is one of the...
You think so?
Just a little.
You think so, Bobby?
Yeah, you think so. So, one form of this would be solipsism. And the solipsis is the person who thinks he's the only one that exists and everything else is just a projection of his or her imagination. And I love to tell the story about the professor who was serving at a school who was a solipsist, walking around teaching as a philosophy professor, thinking he was the only one in existence and everything else was just a projection of his imagination. So it was said that the students did everything they could to prop their teacher up and keep him alive, because once he goes, they go as well. Because if you're just this projection of the imagination of the professor, then you're hosed if he goes out. Well, all that to say, it just goes to show that people can come up with a lot of ludicrous stuff. The reality is that there is such a thing as reality. And this is a discussion that philosophers have had for a long time. You take René Descartes, ergo cogito sum, I think, therefore I am. He sought to doubt everything and then came to the conclusion that he exists. And he could be certain about the fact that he exists because he was able to realize that he thinks, therefore, the fact that he thinks, then he exists. But then he began to start building out knowledge from that standpoint. Well, you'll get people that will try to say there's no such thing as an external world. But I am a realist. I really believe there's a real concrete world out there. In fact, a couple of things. We live as if there's a real external world to us. We don't just operate on illusion when it comes to slowing down at a yellow light because it's going to turn red. We slow down and we stop because we know that I'm really going to die if I run that red light. So while this could be fun stuff for us to talk about as philosophers, it's not livable. We don't live as if we're in a matrix. We don't live as if there's no external world. We don't live as if all this is an illusion. And we don't live as if we're truly solipsis. So I would say on that account, the world, look, are we more rational to believe that there's an external world, or to believe that some mad scientists stimulated us to believe that we are however old we are, but really he just programmed us 5 minutes ago to believe this? What's more logical? Well, to me, I think it's much more logical to believe in a real external world, to not think that we're in some matrix being stimulated, than it is to pick up that stupid theory. So philosophers, they can be really dumb sometimes.
All that to say, there's our quote of the day. We can write that down, make a meme out of it. That was perfect.
This is where you could add just the idea that, like, you're thinking too hard about this, and you need to pull back on this because the imagination kicks in and you go crazy.
Other than that, Ronnie, how's school going?
Oh, it's going great. I'm really excited for this class, actually, because he's talking about we get to defend God and see if God exists. So I've been really interested in apologetics recently, so I'm excited to know why I'm confident God exists. So be praying for me, please.
Yeah, so is it...
that's great.
What school are you going? Is it junior college, master's, undergrad?
I just went back to junior college. I'm trying to go into nursing school, so this is a prereq.
Oh, cool. Great.
So almost there. I got 2 more semesters left, so be praying for that too.
Good for you. That's awesome.
All right.
That's great, Ronnie.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate everything you do.
Thanks.
Call us anytime. 888-564-6173 is the number. We're here till 5 p.m. Pacific time today, so call us, please. Let's go back to another Freedom Radio FM listener, Jonathan in Alabama. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective. Hello.
Hey, how are y'all doing today?
Great. How you doing, Jonathan?
We all are doing fine.
Doing good. Yeah, really enjoy y'all's show. I mean, it's one of my most entertaining parts of my day, being able to tune in and actually, be informed as well, not just entertained.
Oh, right.
And entertained on my way home from work. So I appreciate it.
Well, we are happy that we can provide both entertainment and information. That's helpful.
Right.
That's right. That's right.
Definitely.
Some programs only provide entertainment. Others only provide information. We do both. Jonathan, what do you want to know?
That's right.
Great. Yeah, so my question is, basically my wife and I have been reading through the Old Testament right now. We're in Genesis, and Abraham, we're reading about him, and Sarah just passed away, and it talks about Keturah, and it talks about which is his new wife, and then it talks about the concubines that he had as well, and that kind of prompted a discussion between my wife and myself, and we're like, how does God feel about these concubines in the Old Testament from these, faith heroes like Abraham and David, and you read about these people who had concubines, and then you look and you flip to the New Testament and you see, God's pretty clear about, you won't he wants the leaders, especially in the church, to be the husband of one wife, and it's very clear how God feels about marriage, and
right.
And it just seems so different in the Old Testament, and I think it's just so crucial, to ask those hard questions right now, because I don't know the answer, and in a culture where our marriage is so shaky, about well, how does God really feel about marriage? And now you don't, you look at the Old Testament and you see concubines and multiple wives, and you see New Testament, it changes, and just wanted to get some clarity around that. How did God view concubines in the Old Testament and multiple wives?
Yeah, that's great. Those are good questions, and so I think the best way to tackle this, Jonathan, is to think about the words of Jesus in Mark chapter 10. We can use that text as an example, where Jesus says, he's talking to the religious leaders of his day, and he's talking to them about the subject of divorce. And they're arguing, he says, in the beginning God created them male and female, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother, cling to his wife, the two shall become one. And then the religious leaders respond back with, well, then if, because Jesus is basically holding them to, being one wife, for life kind of a thing. And they say, oh, but why did Moses, tell us to write a certificate of divorce if that's the case? And Jesus said this. He said, Moses permitted you to divorce your wives, but from the beginning it was not so. And so that's where then he goes on to, God created them male and female and so forth. But so what Jesus is doing in a sense is he's resetting things back to God's original intention. So the answer to your question is that God permitted things to happen during the long period of the Old Testament that were not his ideal. And in that particular case, in their response, Moses permitted you to do this because of the hardness of your hearts. And so God, the cultures of the time, this was all very much a part of these ancient cultures, the concubines, especially in any kind of royalty, the harems and things like that. It was all part of the cultural thing. So they adapted to the culture. These were not things that God intended, but God permitted them. But when Jesus comes, and this is why there's the stark difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament. So Jesus comes in a sense, like I said, he sets the reset. He says, okay, so this is what Moses permitted you to do, but I say to you. So that's the reset. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of the New Testament affirms, that you're to husband of one wife and so forth.
Bobby, anything to add to that?
I think that was a very helpful response. And maybe the one thing that I would say is when God, let's try and stand in the shoes of like an Abraham who was Abram when God encountered him. And so God encounters Abram, right, and his family in Ur of the Chaldeans when they would start to begin to access God. Well, it's not like God just gave them a download right when he introduced himself on everything about himself or everything about how they're to live, societal norms and culture. God had a lot to work with. So when he's showing up and encounters like an Abraham or Moses or any of these people, God's meeting them under the condition of where they have been raised and the society that they've lived in and the culture that they have been used to. And so God's going to start making himself known, but it's not like he just downloaded everything about him and about how culture's supposed to be. And so what ends up happening, you take Abraham, God starts working with him where he's at, and he gets a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of revelation, and then, they need to fine tune things. And it's the same thing with Moses. Moses is going to go out of Egypt, and he's going to have to, rethink things over. And then God's going to frame up a theocracy for them while they're out in the wilderness. And there's going to be a whole new download, so to speak, on cultural living in society in the midst of how they're to stand out. And that's going to work for a season, but really Jesus is going to come on the scene, and his Sermon on the Mount is going to set up what kingdom life is to look like. And he's going to kind of do like what Brian said, another reset. Here's what society looks like. Here's what culture looks like. Here's how you're to be salt and light in your culture. And so all that to say, what happens to Paul? Paul encounters Jesus, but then he's got to go away and he has to have some stuff downloaded to him. And he has to figure out how does his Christianity fit with his Judaism. And he has to put all that together. And then he begins to introduce us to how all that frames out in our everyday living. So I think what we do sometimes is we can get frustrated or really confused when we think that Abraham came prepackaged with a perfect understanding of how society and culture and the arts and our relationship to God were to work. No, these were people who, like us, encountered God at a certain point in their life, and they came with a lot of baggage. And so I think the same thing happens to us in other ways, and that's what I would add.
Jonathan, what do you think?
I think all that was very helpful. The points about culture and how God can, interrupt that, and how he did that with Jesus, I think is awesome to look at. So I appreciate all the comments. Thank y'all so much.
Jonathan, it's so good to talk to you. We're glad you're listening, and all joking aside, we're glad you're getting blessed. So, stay in touch.
Absolutely. 888-564-6173. Really quick before we go any further, Brian, Bobby, you guys mentioned the word reset in your answer to Jonathan. And there's a lot of talk right now in the culture that there's going to be a great reset, that the whole pandemic thing was just the start, and now that is triggering other things to happen. And sure enough, we're all going to fall into socialism real soon. What do you say about that?
Well, Brian, I'm
not
just
saying
glad.
I believe it. I'm just telling you.
I'm just glad that Jesus is the one who has his finger on the reset button, and not anybody else.
That's right.
So, I'm not worried about it. I mean, to me, it's like, I think the wisest thing that we can do right now as believers is, why don't we let's just put our eyes on Jesus and ask this simple question: Lord, what are you doing? Because Jesus said it. You remember when Mary and Joseph found him in the temple, and why are you here? And you left us. And he said, didn't you know that I must be about my Father's business? And I think, as the church, we're to be about our Father's business. And there's some stuff that, why are we so preoccupied with this stuff? We have, certain rights, and we have abilities and privileges and things like that. Voting is one of them. We voted. Some people got what they wanted when they voted. Some people didn't get what they wanted. That's happened every single election throughout the entire history of our nation. And so why should this be this thing where this is, look, did you know that there was actually a communist party that was part of, our political process back in the 20s and 30s? There was a communist party. It was like Republican, Democrat, Independent, Communist, right there. So I just think it's, and again, I'm not disagreeing that there are some serious, problems with the worldview of those who have been elected into power. I think that their worldview is completely upside down most of the time. But nevertheless, I can't be controlled by that.
Right.
I can't do anything about it. I did my part. I voted. So what am I going to do next? Am I going to pick up a gun and go, I'm not going to do that. I think, so for me, it's just like, hey, what is the Lord doing? And I'm optimistic that God's doing some really good stuff, and he's going to keep doing. I mean, heck, God sent Bobby back to a place he thought he would never go again to plant a church. So that tells me God's working. He's not worried. He's like, oh, Bobby, you know what? We were gonna do a church plant, but everything's changed now because the election. You know what happened there. So let me think about another plan, and we'll see what we can do with you. That is not happening.
Right.
So I like to keep my eyes on what Jesus is doing and not worry about. And I'm not saying that people I mean, thank God there are Christians in politics. God bless you. Be there. Be salt and light in that realm. Fight for the right things. That's all good. If God calls you into that, do that. But let's just remember that Jesus is actually still the Lord, meaning that he is the ruler of all things.
Yep. Bobby, did you want to add to what Brian just said?
Well, this is what makes Brian so special as a pastor and why he is so honestly meaningful to me. He really has not been disillusioned by life. And, I really think that I would want our listeners to know that's an important piece. I mean, I don't have that mental mindset. You know what my kind of word of the year is, or phrase is mindset. I really want to have that mind in me that is in Christ Jesus. Tough-mindedness, because there's moments where I feel like, I could just go off the deep end at times, like my mental health takes its toll. And being in North Carolina in January, it feels like, you have Gehenna and you have Charlotte in January, and it's cold and dreary, and I have to do everything that I can to remember. And God gave me the privilege of being around Pastor Brian for some time out in California, and I think about him and his mindset and his just ease. It's like water off the back. We just need to trust the Lord. And I want to kind of like say, no, Brian, we need to panic. You should have a panic attack. We should freak out together right now. Like, hey, Brian, let's get together and just worry like crazy. And he just doesn't really do that. And so I love him for it and I hate him for it at the same time.
So, Bobby, are you building underground bunkers at your church there in North Carolina?
Bobby, the thing is, as you know, I had my fair share of panic attacks decades ago, so I just decided I don't want to revisit that.
Yeah, right. Well, I hope I can get there.
You will. All right, so
that's right.
We're coming up on our break, so we're not going to take any more calls until we get back in a few minutes. Don't hang up. Please don't hang up. Please don't hang up. I'm begging. We'll get to you guys as soon as we can. We're going to take a short break, and then we're going to record another hour of your questions and the answers to them. We'll be right with you in just a little bit, and we're going to keep the phone lines open for the next hour. So as these calls drop off one by one, it gives you an opportunity to jump in and ask your question of Pastor Brian Broderson and Dr. Bobby Conway. The phone number again is 888-564-6173. 888-564-6173. Quick break, and then we'll be back. We're also going to be streaming on Facebook.com/PastorsPerspective. If you can't wait until Monday to listen to the episode, you can watch it right now as we record it starting in about 5 minutes on Facebook.com/PastorsPerspective. So you guys on hold, we'll get to you guys first, and we'll be back in just a little bit. For Brian and Bobby, I'm Brian Perez. Good night, and God bless.
Thanks for listening to Pastor's Perspective. We trust you've been blessed and had your question answered. Join us Monday through Friday and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/pastorsperspective. The preceding was sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, California.